Could you survive? Written by Max Brooks. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention released a report. It stated that 75% of Americans would not survive a zombie outbreak. Think about that for a moment. 3 out of 4 people you know would be gone. They would become the very things that hunt you. Could you survive? Would you even want to? The zombie apocalypse. It's a concept that has terrified and fascinated us for decades. From books to movies to video games, we've explored the idea of a world overrun by the undead. But what is it about this particular brand of horror that resonates so deeply with us? Is it the fear of the unknown, the breakdown of society, or something else entirely? The truth is, the zombie apocalypse is a multifaceted metaphor. It reflects our deepest fears about pandemics, societal collapse, and the fragility of human civilization. It's a stark reminder that our comfortable lives can be upended in an instant. Imagine a world where law and order have vanished. The once bustling streets are now eerily silent, devoid of the usual hustle and bustle of daily life. The infrastructure that once supported our civilization lies in ruins, a haunting reminder of what once was. The streets are overrun by hordes of the undead. These mindless creatures, driven by an insatiable hunger, roam the urban landscape, turning it into a nightmarish realm. The sight of these zombies, with their decaying flesh and vacant eyes, is a chilling testament to the collapse of humanity. Resources are scarce and trust is non-existent. The once plentiful grocery stores now have empty shelves and people are forced to scavenge for whatever they can find. In this world, every can of food, every bottle of water becomes a precious commodity, and the fight for survival often pits neighbour against neighbour. This is the grim reality of a zombie apocalypse. The cities we once knew are now devastated, transformed into dangerous wastelands where the living must constantly hide from the undead. The familiar landmarks are now unrecognisable, shrouded in decay and destruction. The collapse of society is perhaps the most terrifying aspect of this scenario. The structures that once symbolized human achievement now lie in ruins, and the social order that held us together has disintegrated. The sense of security we once took for granted is gone, replaced by a constant state of fear and uncertainty. It's a descent into chaos, where survival becomes the only imperative. People are constantly on the move, running from danger, fighting off zombies, and navigating through chaotic street scenes. The rules of the old world no longer apply, and every decision can mean the difference between life and death. The bonds that hold us together, family, friendship, community, are put to the ultimate test. In this harsh new reality, the strength of these relationships is crucial. Families huddle together for warmth and protection, friends support each other through the darkest times, and communities, though distressed, try to find ways to survive together. Do we band together and fight for survival? In the face of such overwhelming odds, some choose to unite, strategizing and preparing for battle against the undead threat. These groups of survivors understand that their best chance lies in cooperation and mutual support. Or do we succumb to our baser instincts and turn on each other? Unfortunately, not everyone can rise above the fear and desperation. Distrustful glances and conflicts among survivors become common, as the struggle for limited resources and the pressure of constant danger bring out the worst in some. The zombie apocalypse forces us to confront these uncomfortable questions. As survivors contemplate their next move, the weight of their decisions is evident in their worried, thoughtful expressions. This new world challenges our very humanity, pushing us to reflect on what it means to be human in the face of such relentless adversity. Zombies have been a part of human storytelling for centuries. From Haitian folklore to modern cinema, the undead have captivated our imaginations. But why are we so drawn to these creatures? What is it about their rotting flesh and insatiable hunger that both terrifies and fascinates us? Perhaps it's their relentless pursuit, their single-minded focus on consuming the living. Or maybe it's the fear of losing our humanity, of becoming monsters ourselves. Whatever the reason, zombies tap into a primal fear within us, a fear of the unknown and the uncontrollable. Trapped in the darkness, I'll never forget the first time I saw a real zombie. It was a moment that would forever be etched into my memory, a moment that changed everything I thought I knew about fear and survival. It was during the early days of the outbreak. The world was still trying to come to terms with the reality of the situation. Panic and chaos were everywhere, and the streets, once bustling with life, were now eerily empty. I was holed up in an abandoned grocery store with a handful of other survivors. We had barricaded ourselves inside, hoping to stay hidden from the horrors outside. The store, once a place of normalcy and routine, had become our fortress, our last line of defense. We were running low on supplies, and I had volunteered to go out on a scavenging run. It was a dangerous task, but one that was necessary for our survival. With a flashlight in hand and a heart full of trepidation, I prepared myself for the unknown. The store was eerily silent, except for the soft moans of the undead outside. Every creak and rustle seemed amplified in the oppressive silence, making my nerves stand on edge. The once familiar aisles now felt like a labyrinth of shadows and danger. I made my way through the aisles, my heart pounding in my chest. Each step felt like a gamble, a test of my courage and resolve. The beam of my flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing glimpses of the store's former life. As I rounded a corner, I came face to face with it. The sight was so sudden and shocking that it took my breath away. My mind raced, trying to process the horror standing before me. It was a woman, or at least what was left of her. Her clothes were tattered, and her once vibrant hair hung in matted clumps. The transformation from human to monster was both tragic and terrifying. Her skin was grey and rotting, her eyes milky white. The decay was so advanced that it was hard to believe she had once been a living, breathing person. The sight was a grim reminder of what awaited us all if we weren't careful. She lunged at me, her mouth open in a silent scream. The sheer ferocity of her attack was overwhelming, and I barely had time to react. In that moment, I realized just how fragile our existence had become, and how every second was a fight for survival. The walking nightmares among us. I froze, my mind unable to process what I was seeing. This wasn't some horror movie. This was real. The stench of decay filled my nostrils, and I could hear the wet, gurgling sounds coming from deep within her throat. For a moment we just stared at each other, predator and prey. Then I snapped out of it. I raised my weapon and did what I had to do. That night I learned a valuable lesson. In the world of the undead, hesitation can mean the difference between life and death. There's no room for fear or remorse, there's only survival. Why we fear, yet crave, the zombie apocalypse. The zombie apocalypse is more than just a horror story. It's a narrative that taps into our primal fears, the ones that lurk in the shadows of our subconscious. The idea of a world overrun by the undead is terrifying, yet it captivates us. It's a reflection of our deepest fears and anxieties. The fear of losing control, of society breaking down, of the familiar turning into the unknown. These are the elements that make the zombie apocalypse so compelling. It's a reminder that the world as we know it can change in an instant. One moment everything is normal, and the next, chaos reigns. This sudden shift is a metaphor for the unpredictability of life itself, but it's also a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. In the face of overwhelming odds, we see characters banding together, forming communities, and fighting for survival. This resilience is a powerful message of hope. Even in the face of unimaginable horror, we find ways to survive, to adapt, to hope. The struggle for survival brings out both the best and the worst in people, highlighting our capacity for both heroism and cruelty. The zombie apocalypse is a genre that will continue to fascinate and terrify us for years to come. From books to movies to video games, it has become a staple of popular culture, constantly evolving and reflecting the fears of each generation. It's a story that forces us to confront our own mortality, our capacity for both good and evil. The choices characters make in these dire situations often mirror the moral dilemmas we face in our own lives, albeit in a more extreme context. It's a story that reminds us that even in the darkest of times, there's always a glimmer of hope. The dawn after the long night, the rebuilding after the destruction, the human spirit's unyielding quest for a better tomorrow. This is why we fear yet crave the zombie apocalypse. What would you do? So the next time you find yourself watching a zombie movie or reading a zombie book, ask yourself this: what would I do? How would I survive? And most importantly, what kind of person would I become? The answers might surprise you. What are your thoughts on the enduring appeal of the zombie apocalypse? Share your comments below and let's continue the conversation. For further reading on the topic, I highly recommend The Zombie Survival Guide by Max Brooks. It's a must-read for anyone who's ever wondered how they would fare in the face of the undead.